Joining us now is NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans, staff writer for The Atlantic, and MSNBC political analyst Ashley Parker, and University of Michigan professor of economics and public policy Justin Wolfers. Great to have all of you with us this afternoon. So, Christine, the president's pullback on Powell, on China, seems to be at least encouraging for the markets. But does it really change the dynamics at all?
I mean, it's a tone shift, but when you look at all of these headlines, absolutely nothing has changed on the ground. You still have very steep tariffs on China right now. You have 10% tariffs on everyone else. You've got 25%. I mean, it's still the same situation. It's just the president's words that have changed. And what is so remarkable to me is that threats and words and posts on social media can literally move markets 1,000 points. I mean, nothing has really changed except a tone shift, and you've got this market moving all over the place. Other presidencies have been so careful not to do this, not to move the dollar, not to move bonds, not to move the stock market. This is a completely unprecedented series of events we're into. I mean, earlier today, you had the Dow. Gosh, I think it was up a lot more than this. It was up 1,100 points at its best. So now it's even come off of that best. See, now it's 700 points off of the highs of the day, but still up 1%. That's a remarkable one-day swing.
Yeah, up at any rate. And that is obviously good news for anybody who has any money in the stock market right now. We had more words today from China and the White House. Take a listen to what we heard from the White House press secretary a short time ago.
Let me be clear. There will be no unilateral reduction in tariffs against China. The president has made it clear China needs to make a deal with the United States of America, and we are optimistic that will happen.
Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry spokesperson said this today, quote, if a negotiated solution is truly what the U.S. wants, it should stop threatening and blackmailing China and seek dialogue based on equality, respect, and mutual benefit. Okay, so where does that leave us, this back and forth, when it comes to an actual deal, Christine?
So he says tariffs will come down against China. She says there won't be unilaterally lowering of tariffs against China. I mean, where does it leave us? Again, exactly where we were 2 days ago, except the tone has changed from the White House. The president was really dug in over the last few weeks that this was going to be the way of the future. And if you don't like it, make it in America. Now he's talking about bringing those tariffs down. I mean, the last time they did a trade deal with China took a couple of years. The USMCA with Mexico and Canada, that was 2 years to hammer out. So where are the negotiating teams talking? Are they working? I mean, up until now, this is all still headlines.
That's right, Ashley. For weeks, the president had been digging in, saying, just wait, short-term pain for long-term gain. So what do you make of his change in tune and so suddenly? What spooked him?
Well, it's been interesting. The president did exhibit a pain tolerance and sort of a patience that we don't normally associate with him up until a point. But it was originally, when he did that 90-day pause and backtracked, it was the bond markets that very clearly spooked him. And now you just had these big box retailers coming in and telling him the reality of his tariffs. They said, prices haven't gone up yet, but they will, and the shelves will be empty. You remember President Trump musing about the word groceries. He does have a visceral sense of what American voters will tolerate and what they won't. You've had people like Scott Bessent behind the scenes also privately making the case. But Trump has begun responding to the markets and some of these concerns in a way he was not initially.
So, Justin, how detrimental is all this wobbling, this changing of course? Can investors, can foreign partners trust what this president says when his actions show he's been all over the place?
Well, the immediate cost, I think, is pretty straightforward, which is if you talk to anyone in any company, in any industry in the United States, all management is spending their time doing is figuring out how to respond to the White House. It's, how do we get inputs? How do we retool? Do we bring stuff in from this country or from that country? Are things going to change again tomorrow? And no one's actually got the time to manage their companies. I do think there is actually one spectacular piece of good news in all of this, which is Trump has shown that if markets vomit hard enough, he'll reverse course. And he's gotten a couple of very big bumps in a row. Every time he announces to markets, I'm not going to follow my instincts, stocks go way back up. And if he likes stocks going up, maybe he'll follow that path.
Yeah, we've seen the president's economic policies and public comments essentially hit U.S. stocks, bonds, and currency all at the same time. Justin, have you ever seen anything like that?
Not from the US. You do see this in developing countries when markets lose faith in governments, and that's really what's happening. So I do think it's important to underscore there's not just a tariff shock going on right now. There's also an enormous uncertainty shock. No one knows what policy is going to be today or tomorrow. And in fact, the White House can't decide whether it's about to reduce tariffs on China. That's what Trump said. Then Bessent said they weren't. And then the press secretary said they unequivocally weren't. And I forget which one of them is in charge right now. So there's the uncertainty shock. And then there's just enormous crisis of confidence in this administration, which I think is really going to pull back on the extent to which people are willing to invest.
It is unclear exactly what is influencing the president or who he is listening to. Christine, there are obviously the market issues, but there was also this meeting with top retail CEOs at the White House earlier this week. The CEOs of Target, Walmart, Home Depot, and Axios is reporting that they really warned the president that his tariff policies could disrupt supply chains, empty shelves. Obviously, we've talked about prices going up. Do you think that's having a sway here?
I mean, I think that there are so many executives who are quietly trying to talk to the president, but you don't hear them publicly very aggressively talking about how tough this is going to be for their business. We're about to get all these earnings reports where you're going to have companies, you already have, they're pulling their guidance for the rest of the year because they don't even know how to tell investors what in the world is going to happen to their business. When you talk about those big retailers, they are the tip of the spear. I mean, so many of them get a lot of product from all over the world. And when you have 145% tariffs and 125% tariffs between the U.S. and Canada, or U.S. and China, I mean, as Scott Bessent said behind closed doors earlier this week, that's essentially a trade embargo between the two biggest economies in the world. That's just remarkable. That will be felt by consumers and in store shelves, no question.
I mean, even if the president decides to cut the tariffs against China in half, I mean, we're still talking about tariffs above 50% against China. Right. Will that make a big impact?
So think about this. Think you're a small business owner. You have $10,000 worth of goods coming across the border. Right now, there's a tariff that's more expensive than what you're bringing in is what you have to pay to bring it in. I mean, that is a lot of money. There are all kinds of small businesses that are actually hiring people at ports to say, no, I'm not taking delivery of this. I can't afford it. So it is just a huge supply chain problem in the making here.
And I want to add to our conversation now, Punchbowl News co-founder and MSNBC political contributor Jake Sherman. Jake, all the recent polling is showing the president underwater on the economy right now. What are you hearing from the president's allies on the Hill? Are they worried?
Yeah, they're worried. They won't say it publicly. Here's the interesting thing about what you have to consider about the Trump presidency, which is on Capitol Hill in Washington, usually there is a push and pull between the administration and the president's party on Capitol Hill. We saw that when President Joe Biden dropped out of the election. He did so after a significant amount of pushback from his allies on Capitol Hill. In this administration, when Donald Trump is president, there is no pushback from Capitol Hill. So the president is relatively insulated from public opinion. He's not going out to supermarkets. Presidents never do, no matter the party. But members of the House and the Senate are at home. They are hearing from folks, but they are not reacting because of their fear for President Trump. So the president's information flow is relatively stunted or limited. That leads to interesting outcomes when it comes to policy making and decision making. Now, there were some murmurs of the president, of Congress rather, passing legislation to blunt the president on tariffs. The Speaker Mike Johnson shut off a pathway for Congress to express its opinion in a fast-track way.
So is that
to
just
ensure
posturing?
that
Is it, I mean, if things aren't actually getting done, when a Republican says, oh, we're going to co-sponsor this legislation, we're going to exert our power of the purse. I mean, do they really think it's going to go anywhere, or are they just putting it out there for their constituents to hear them fighting for them?
Probably a mix of both, but it is posturing to some degree because they can't get through even if it gets through the House and the Senate, it's going to go to a president who's going to veto it, and then Republicans are not going to overturn his veto, even if they could get it through Capitol Hill. But I like to remind Republicans of this. Every House Republican and about a third of Senate Republicans or the senators are going to be up for re-election next year. Donald Trump is not going to be up for re-election ever. So he is able to make, and he doesn't care really who has control of Congress. He didn't last time. He told me in an interview back in 2017, he didn't care who controlled Congress. So that leads to, again, a skewed incentive structure and a skewed decision-making structure.